but without a single doubt, as sure as you know that your left hand is definitely your left hand and your right hand is your right hand, I was looking face to face with Jesus.
Hello, passionate listeners and watchers. Welcome to Passion Harvest. I am Luisa, your host. Thank you so much for joining me wherever you are in the world right now. I'm so excited about our guest today, Skylar DeMayo. Skylar DeMayo, a US Air Force veteran, died in 2008 after a near-death experience through cardiac arrest while stationed at Langley Air Force Base. Chase kept his NDE private in fear of judgment for 12 years until now. Chase was sent back from the other side to spread laughter, light, love, and joy to the world. He is passionate about helping fellow veterans. This is his story and this is his passion. Chase, welcome to Passion Harvest. I'm so honored to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. I'm honored as well. I listen to your podcast, so it's really exciting to be here and to be able to talk to you.
Oh, I can't wait to share your story today. Well, let's dive right in. Let's get started. You had a profound near-death experience, and I would love you to share that story with the audience.
Absolutely. I'm already getting goosebumps. As soon as you asked me to start sharing it, the feeling rushes back. So if I'm smiling big while I tell it, it's for good reason. My experience was a beautiful experience. It was in April 1st, 2008. I was in the United States Air Force at the time. I was stationed in Langley in Virginia, and I was young. I was 19 years old, kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I had already been injured. So my left knee was injured pretty bad in a training exercise. And in my head, I kind of already thought, I'm not going to be in the Air Force much longer. Started showing up late for work, which in the military, as you know, is a big no-no. You don't show up late for anything. You got to be 15 minutes early. But in my head, I just thought, well, my lifelong goal, my lifelong dream of being in the military is just kind of gone down the drain. So I was upset. I would say there was a state of depression there of, what am I going to do with my life now? Everything, since I was probably maybe 10 years old, I thought I was, convinced I was going to be in the military my entire life, So sure enough, one of the mornings I was late for work, and my supervisor thought that she was going to catch me in my room, kind of sleeping in and just kind of playing, hooky, I guess you could say, right? Just trying to be late on purpose. And she found me unconscious on my floor in my dorm room. They have access to your room. They sent me immediately to the emergency room on base. And they started running a ton of tests on me. They said, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to check your blood. And as I was sitting there in that hospital bed, nothing was coming back abnormal. Everything was completely made me look super healthy. So they were very confused why you were laying, passed out on the floor. Of course, there's no hint of drugs or alcohol or anything like that. So they were just kind of scratching their heads, and you could visibly see it on their faces. Why was this 19-year-old guy, and I was in great shape, and didn't make sense. So they said, one of the nurses said, we're going to do a chest x-ray, a mobile one. So we're going to leave the room, we're going to come back with the chest x-ray, and we'll be right back. And that's when my entire life changed. From that moment when she left the room, I just got this, the best way to describe it is if you're ever watching, hospital shows, on TV, where my vision really started to go from left and right, really blurry, double vision, shaky, but calm at the same time. A lot of this is very confusing because I could say something happened fast and slow at the same time, cold and hot, but really my vision really just started going super shaky. And it was at that time that I started to hear alarms and things going off that I didn't know what was going on. And it was this sense of confusion, and I've seen this in movies before. What's going on? My eyesight is just kind of going in and out, and nurses and doctors start running in. And I was at the end of the hospital. I was the last bed basically in the hospital room, and so people were almost running into the wall to try to hit the brakes and try to figure out why the alarms were kind of blaring for me. as the nurses and doctors start coming in, they start shouting. They're looking over my body, really confused again, but obviously with panic and confusion. And for me, I started to feel this beautiful sense of calmness, when really for me, maybe the most chaotic seconds or minute of my life just felt incredibly calm and peaceful. When, if something scary happens to me, if I watch a scary movie or somebody jumps out, you remember that scare, but this was just happiness of while something bad was happening to me. Somebody sat down to the left of me while this was going on, and the monitor was to the left of my face, while I'm laying down in the bed. And there's somebody just started stroking my left arm, really peacefully, giving me goosebumps. And as a 19-year-old guy at the time, I didn't want some guy, and I knew it was a guy that was stroking my arm. Normally, if a stranger is stroking my arm, I'm not going to be too happy about it. I'll be a little bit confused. And instead, it was just this peaceful feeling of love kind of massaging my arm, and a booming voice, while everybody is shouting and alarms are going off. I hear this voice say, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it." And he's just continually stroking my arm. I try to look over in that chaos to look to my left, and I'm prevented. He doesn't allow me to look over, to my left, and he won't let me see him. And he says, in all this chaos, he calmly says, "There's going to be a lot of pain going up your arm. There's air going up to your heart, and it's going to cause you a lot of pain, but everything's going to be okay." And in that moment, I start to look at the nurses and doctors above me, and they're watching me die. And that's not a facial expression anybody can mimic, right? You can show that you're scared, you can show that you're happy, somebody can make a confused face, but to watch somebody watch you die is a scary moment. And instead, when that should have been scary, I just felt like everything was going to be okay. And I was confident in that. And at the last second, I tried to turn over again. The pain shooting up my arm, I kind of described as like a silver bullet, going up my arm. It was very painful. And I can remember that pain to this day. What had happened was it was an air embolism. Air had accidentally, I guess, traveled up my IV and was traveling directly to my heart to stop my heart. So I look over to my left one more time to try to get a glimpse of who's stroking my arm. And at that moment, that hospital monitor went completely flat. And I watched myself die. And I get teary-eyed talking about it because that's a very scary thing to admit. And in that moment was the most peaceful and beautiful moment of my life. I just remember it was like ice pouring out of my heart, my chest. And when my heart should have been in pain, it felt like the most cooling, beautiful sensation, like ice water, really, on a hot day, especially in Australia or in Florida where I'm at, right? It felt so beautiful. And from that moment, my body started to travel upwards. And it wasn't a tunnel, maybe like some other people suggest. For me, it was like I was being spun up almost like a tornado, because it was just like things circling around me, these beautiful, I would describe them as angels, just things of light. And there was like laughter and music, and the music, it's hard to explain, but it was like bells, like almost like church bells kind of ringing around. And before I knew it, I was looking at the most beautiful garden ever. Hard to describe because we just don't have colors. We have beautiful greens, and your shirt's a beautiful blue. And these were like vivid, very vivid colors that you just can't, I wish I could paint them, and I can't. And I was looking at this garden, and there was just plants and trees, it was just a nice feeling, a place. And I remember seeing somebody with a robe, a gentleman with a robe, and there was a little boy with curly blonde hair, little red, almost, so blonde it was like red and curly. And for anybody not watching the video that's listening to the podcast, I have dark brown hair, right? So I watched this gentleman and this kid, and they're playing out in this little garden. And before I know it, my feet are planted, and I can remember the feeling of being planted in the dirt and feeling the blades of grass on my feet. And so there wasn't a sense of, in a dream, it's hard because in a dream you can remember things, but you don't necessarily feel things. That's the expression, pinch me, I must be dreaming. I remember my feet being buried into the dirt. And I'm watching this gentleman play with this little boy, and the little boy is very cheeky. He's like running away and looking back like, oh, I'm getting away from you. You can't catch me. And there's just this beautiful relationship between the man and the little boy. And as I get closer, I start to realize that that's me, that I'm that little boy. Up until I was about 5 years old, I had like golden, blonde hair. And for whatever reason, it's changed to dark brown now. And I start to look, and as I'm looking at the little boy having the time of his life playing and laughing, the gentleman in the white robe turns to me, and I am just stunned, because without question, without not knowing, for me, it was Jesus. And I say that because I hesitate, because he's not who I grew up looking at, right? It wasn't the picture, or if you go to church and you see somebody on an altar, or photos, or sculptures. He didn't look like that to me, but without a single doubt, as sure as that your left hand is definitely your left hand and your right hand is your right hand, I was looking face to face with Jesus. And without getting too off track, at that time, maybe the day before I died while I was in the military, if you had said, hey, Chase, if you die tomorrow, who are you going to see in heaven? I probably would not have said, I'm going to come to face with Jesus. I would have said, I'm going to run into Elvis Presley and I'm going to have milk and cookies. It really wasn't predetermined that that's what I was going to see. So I was really, really, starstruck, if you will, of like, whoa, Jesus is right here in front of me, and everything's kind of starts to click. We share this really, I say it took forever, and it was really quick feeling, of this almost a communication where we were talking without sharing words verbally. I'm sure he didn't speak English, right? And that's what I speak. So, we're sharing this conversation, and I'm learning all these details, and without sharing like verbal words, noises, he kind of looks at me and says, go back and share love, laughter, and light and joy. And I look at that little boy, and he was having the time of his life. And my lesson while I was there was to find laughter. Finding joy is so underrated, right? All of us live really busy lives. And, you think of people that work a 9-to-5 job, it's really hard for them to find a lot of laughter while they're at work. And that's the biggest lesson I took. So without really time to say anything else to him, he kind of looked at me and said, you have to go back now. And I was okay with that. As beautiful as this place was, the garden, seeing me as a little boy, having this conversation with Jesus, I was ready to go back, because I felt like I had a lot more to prove and a lot more to share and to teach, and to just more things to love that I didn't appreciate while I was, originally on the earth. And before I knew it, I was back in my body. Now, I woke up and I thought at first it was a dream. I tried opening up my eyes, and if you're having a great dream, you close your eyes again and go, oh, just one more minute. But once I realized it wasn't a dream, and I had to be back in my body, I opened up my eyes, and it didn't take long for me to realize that I was no longer on the Air Force Base where I died. Nobody was wearing uniforms. Everybody was normally wearing a uniform or camouflage, or we call them BDUs back then. And I realized I don't know where I am. I'm in a hospital room, but I was not connected to anything. I think back, if somebody dies of an air embolism, really a cardiac arrest, you're going to have that person hooked up to, to all different contraptions and IVs. And I realized that the Air Force in order to not pronounce me dead on base, they sent me to a civilian hospital. And that's where I woke up. And so I was essentially pronounced dead off base. So the military didn't have to take credit for that. And yeah, I woke up on a civilian hospital. A nurse eventually came in, and it was just a really blank room. There was really nothing going on in that room. And she kind of just said, I'm going to go get the doctor. Ran and got the doctor. Doctor comes in, and I'm sure looking back now, I really wish I could remember more of that moment, but I'm sure he's thinking, what the heck? How is this person alive again? And they said, we don't know what else to tell you. We're just going to send you back to the Air Force Base for more testing because you're their responsibility. And so sure enough, they cut me loose from the hospital. They said I was free to leave. And like any 19-year-old would do after they just died, I said, I want to go out to dinner. I'm going to go hang out with my friends, and I'm not going back to the hospital. And so eventually, a couple of days later, I went back to the hospital. They ran every test they could on my heart after that. Monitors, things I had to wear for 2 weeks, extensive tests, and there is nothing wrong with my heart now. Not then, not now. Whatever happened to me, I was completely healed. So that's, in a nutshell, my beautiful near-death experience. But the sad part of that near-death experience is, as beautiful as it was for me, is I was terrified to tell anybody. Because in the military, it's very unique because, if you work a 9-to-5 job, you're able to go talk to a therapist privately. If you're stressed out at work, you can say, I'm suffering from a little bit of stress, anxiety, depression, and you are able to go talk to somebody, and nobody will go back to your work and say, hey, they're going through this, you should know about it. But in the military, there are no secrets. So if I were to go and talk to somebody and say, I had this really beautiful, profound experience, I don't know who to talk to about it, within an hour, my bosses would know about it, my supervisors would all know about it, coworkers would know about it, and they would probably kick you out of the military, for being crazy, right? That's what they would say. So I hold no resentment towards the military. I was very proud to serve in the military. I'm an advocate for veterans. I should say that. I don't hold any resentment to the nurse that accidentally hurt me or the doctors. I just feel like it was supposed to happen. So I don't hold any grudges. And I understand why they sent me off base, to pronounce me dead. I understand it. Am I happy about it? Probably not. But like I said, the real tragedy is that I felt like I had to keep this a secret when my life probably could have looked very different, had I been able to share what I went through. It wasn't until I started to really trust people again. And I found, if I was dating a girl, I would share it with her once I trusted her. I would share it with my family, really people that I thought, okay, we know Chase. We're not going to think he's crazy. So those are the only people I really shared it with. And then I went on a retreat with a veterans organization, and something about that retreat opened up everything for me. I came back, and within a day of coming back, my life completely changed for the better. And I just felt like I finally found my purpose to really start sharing my story with more people.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that profound experience. Many people say it's so hard to describe in words, but you are very articulate. Can I just ask you a few questions?
Please.
How have you fundamentally changed since your near-death experience? What are the differences?
There's some really common ones. Like I could say my temperature is a lot lower, my body temperature is lower, electronics I break easier. But my biggest thing is that I changed because I realized that everybody here has a purpose, right? Everybody on this earth has a purpose. And there is no greater feeling than smiling and finding your passion, which is why I'm excited to be on this podcast. I always say now, I say chase the light, which is just obviously a play on my name,
I
Chase.
love that.
Thank you. But when I first got out of the Air Force, so I was medically retired out of the Air Force, like a permanent retirement. And so I was given a second chance at life, I feel like. I was young and I could really have done anything I wanted, and I did. So anything that I wanted to do when I was a little kid, anything that influenced me, I knew I was going to go back and try those things. So for example, I was really into photography. So I invested in a really nice camera, became a photographer, shot weddings for people, got to do stuff, got put in a magazine, really, really cool. And then I said, you know what? People always said I was funny growing up. I want to be a comedian. And sure enough, I put myself in comedy school, and I got to perform comedy, and I went through and I got to headline a show, at a really nice comedy club. And then I stopped. I remember thinking breakdancing was cool. There was this old movie called Breakin', Electric Boogaloo, right? It came out, I think, in the 80s.
I think I've seen it.
Right. And I used to think it was the coolest movie. So I joined a breakdancing club at a local university. I didn't even go to that university, but I just, searched online and became a breakdancer. We got to do performances, and people would look and go, "How old are you?" And I would tell them my age, and they'd be like, "Look at your resume. You're this, you've done DJing, you're a photographer, breakdancer, comedian," and I wouldn't slow down. For better or for worse at the time, I just was I guess you could say on a tear to just do everything that interests me.
A passion for life.
It was a passion for life. And I just thought, if this happens again, if my heart stops again and I go back up again, I did everything I loved. I'm so fulfilled. I loved everything. I loved people. I loved things that I thought were cool, and to me, that's what passion is about, and chasing the light. So your question of, how it fundamentally changed me is, I realized that there's no sense of waiting to find things that you love. My brother and my wife really are great examples. My brother, ever since he was grew up obsessed with comic books, obsessed. And he's 5 years older than me, and I used to kind of pick on him and go, "Oh, what a nerd, reading comic books, you're in high school now." And sure enough, now he's, I don't want to say the things that he's written, but he's written very well-known TV shows and comic book movies. And so he is living his passion since he was little. My wife started dancing when she was 3 years old, and she's still a dancer now, and she's living her passion. And so for me, any way that I can help spread that joy for people and say, "Hey, if you wanted to be a ballerina when you're a little girl, but now you're working in accounting, it's not too late." It doesn't mean you have to go perform, in France and be this beautiful ballerina on stage, but there are classes locally, or there's like meetup groups where you can, find that passion again. What made you happy when you were a little kid? And so I would say that's the biggest change in me, is realizing that there are so many ways to find things that you love and find a life that you love.
That's so beautiful. Of course, I 100% agree with you, but I also say to people that are trying to find their purpose or their passion, and I guess they're different, but that excitement, that feeling is your intuitive guidance guiding you.
Right.
Fear often gets in the way.
Absolutely. Fear and money, I think, are the two biggest things, or they don't want to disappoint themselves. If somebody
or
says,
others.
Exactly.
Big
That's
one.
exactly right. You're completely right. Those would be like the three evil parts, right? Of others, fear of rejection, money. But what I say to that is you have to live for yourself. It's okay to be selfish sometimes. We live in a world where they say, look out for everybody. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. But it's okay to say, you know what, I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to take every Wednesday night, and I'm just going to find an hour to myself to find something I really love. Maybe 2 years ago, for me personally, I had to fill out a survey that said, "What are your hobbies?" And it was blank. I said, "Oh, spend time with family," which was really a cop out, because I love my family, but I couldn't think of any other hobbies. I had let all of that go away for some of those reasons, because money, I said, I don't have the money to go and try all these, fun things. And then fear of, what if I stink at it? What if I, find something, if I really want to learn how to be a painter, what if I'm terrible? You get older, you start to suffer from that anxiety of, rejection or failure. So I said, I've really got to turn this around. I don't have any hobbies anymore. And so I think, like you said, there are elements where people hold themselves back and say, I can't do this because of that. And I can't, and I agree. There's some people that are very physically disabled that are unable to maybe find their joy, but there are ways to be creative. And I think just talking to somebody and saying, what I really wanted to do when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a break dancer. And somebody might say, you know what? I heard about this group with people in wheelchairs where they can learn how to dance. So you just never know. But I think if we all share our passions or our joys or things we loved when we were a little kid with more people, I think, like you said, there's synchronicities all over the place where our angels will guide us and say, as long as we're looking, right? That's the kicker there is, if we're looking for those signs will be there for us. And I think that's something I certainly can do more of is look for the signs and not ignore the signs around me.
What an inspiration you are. It's so important to get clear on what it is that you want. I'm sure people ask you this as well. I get it a lot, but what's your advice for those people that say, I don't know what my passion is. I don't know what I want.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's even more exciting to me. If somebody kind of feels downhearted and says, I just don't know what I love anymore, or I just don't know what excites me, to me, that's a blank canvas. And there's nothing more beautiful than a blank canvas. I say, go out and try things. There are so many different apps now and websites and just different ways to just connect and say, you know what? Great example is, I've never been to a yoga class before. I thought, I'm a big guy, I'm not going to go do yoga. And I tried it and I really did like it, but there was limitations because I have a replaced knee and bad back. And I thought, okay, well, I tried it. And then sure enough, I found, another area of that. I just became a Reiki master recently.
Congratulations.
A year and a half ago. Thank you so much. A year and a half ago, I didn't know how to pronounce Reiki. I would have said Raki or Reiki, or I was a little bit naive on a lot of these things. I didn't own a healing crystal until a year and a half ago. It was something that I did not believe in. But then as I really started to research it and go and really try to find crystals that spoke to me, then I found this whole beautiful world of something I didn't know. So for people who don't know your passion and you don't know, maybe you've just, life has kind of beat you down a little bit to say, I don't know what I like anymore. Just go out and try stuff. There's, there's websites where you can search festivals in my area or, art walks in my area, then just try those things. And a lot of those things are free. So if money is a limitation, just go out and try some of those free events and something might spark for you, but you have to be open to the spark. If you're walking around going, angels speak to me, point me in the direction, it might not happen. But if something stands out to you and really gets that jitter or that goosebump for you, then I think you're starting to go down the right path of, oh, I think I like this, and keep going down that path.
Gosh, I'm so inspired talking to you. Have you had an experience with Jesus since your near-death experience?
I have. I'm so glad you asked that. I continue as I meditate and as I continue to feel more comfortable asking angels or Jesus for questions, I feel like they are there for me all the time. And when they're not there for me, I still think they're there. There's moments where I will meditate and I'll just expect to kind of relax and just be in, just kind of take a quick 10-minute break or 30-minute break. And all of a sudden it's kind of like a boom, we're right back talking again. And I want to ask questions and I go, I mean, this sounds kind of funny, but I just maybe a couple of weeks ago, I said, how do you feel about the cross? And I was trying to talk to Jesus and I said, how do you feel about the cross? And he said, well, if it was my, and I laughed because some people don't want to have that funny relationship, but we have to remember that he was a man And everybody has a sense of humor, right? So I kind of say that, because people go, no, he doesn't laugh. And I'm like, that's not true, And I said, how do you feel about the cross? And he said, I feel better about the sun, because whether you can see me or not, I'm always there. Whether it's dark or it's light out, I am always there, and I'm always there to bring light to you. And I started crying, and we were on a plane, and my wife said, what's wrong? And I was like, oh, and she kind of knew. She knew something was happening spiritually for me at that moment. So I am able to communicate if I ask, and sometimes it happens when I least expect it. But for those people, I should say I've had people message me the more I share my story, and people are jealous, and which makes me sad, of course, because I don't want people to be jealous of my experience. Some people will say, I pray every day, I've been going to church for 30 years and I've had no luck. I can't speak to anybody, I can't talk to Jesus. And that makes me sad, because two things. One, it's not fun to die. My experience started because of that, which isn't a fun experience. It happened to be beautiful for me. And two, he's always around. And it's not just about Christianity. I believe that if you are of Native American background, if you're Buddhist, Islamic, if you're atheist, whatever you believe in, whatever kind of presence you have, that something that is out there that you want to strive to work towards, I believe that you can talk to those people or beings. I don't want to say people, but I believe that there's always somebody to talk to that you can't see or hear or feel, maybe. So yes, I can communicate often. I try to, but for those of listeners that say, I just can't break through it, just know that they are listening and that they are always here to help. Nobody in heaven or in any other realm wants to see anybody suffer. That's never, ever the case. So just stay positive and know that just because you can't see them right now doesn't mean they're not there.
Beautiful. I've just got two more questions, if that's
Of
okay
course.
with you.
Please, yeah.
You explained it so well, but are you able to describe from your experience what Jesus looked like?
Yeah. So the closest I've ever seen, which to me is like a photograph image, it was drawn by this, she was very young at the time. Her name was, I don't want to pronounce it wrong. So somebody, it's Akian or Akiani, I believe her name is, a young girl. And so for me, he had tight brown curly hair. It was short, and he had these stark green eyes, chiseled jaw, was super tanned, he was a tanned gentleman. And but the eyes to me were the kindest eyes I've ever seen. They had wrinkles in the side from laughing and smiling. And I remember that standing out to me. Just regular, like, pierced lips, and just, maybe from what I can remember, like 5'9" in height, 5'9" in height. But I watched a movie called Heaven is for Real. I think it was Heaven is for Real with my wife once. Didn't know what we were getting into. I cried my eyes out during the whole movie because it hit home. I had never really heard a near-death experience other than mine at the time. I didn't go and research it at the time. So when I saw that movie, that kind of sparked a lot for me and said, whoa, there's a lot of other people maybe that went through this. And towards the end of that movie, they show that painting by the young girl.
Seen it.
And to me, it's like, if I took a picture of you right now, that's what you look like. And if you saw a picture of me, that's what I look like. That painting that she did was 100% what he looked like to me. So when I still see that painting, I get the tear in my eye. I get a little overwhelmed because it kind of takes my breath away of the beauty of that feeling that I had while I was in heaven. And so I don't know if that helps answer it, but that to me is exactly what he looked like.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, it was an emotive, a feeling experience more than anything. Yeah. I guess my last question is, what is your advice to many of those people that are afraid of death? Yeah. That's the number one question, right? Yeah. And it's a fair question.
I don't fear death, so I can only speak from my experience. I feel like if you live a beautiful life here, to the best of your ability, I don't think you should fear death. There are a lot of times where people might be dying before you feel like you get what you want out of somebody, right? So my wife's grandfather just passed away recently. Since a lot of this near-death experience stuff has come up for me, he was the first person that was close to us that passed away. And it was really tough for me because I'm so confident that she's going to have him in his life for the rest of her life. He's always going to be around. He's always going to be there to comfort her. He was in Australia, so I said, he's going to be closer than he ever was with you, right? Because we would have to buy a ticket on Qantas, to fly over to see him. Where now, if you close your eyes and you just want his presence, he's going to be right there. So people who are afraid of death, just know that my experience was really beautiful. My experience taught me that there's nothing to be afraid of, but while you're here, do everything you can to smile. And you'll feel so much better when that time comes. And if you have somebody, let's say in your family, if you have a parent or a sibling or a close friend who is, aging, getting older, or who is sick, just be there for them in that moment. And as hard as it is to say it, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, because if I lose my parents, I know I'm going to be heartbroken, even knowing what I know. But just know in your heart and in the back of your mind that they're always going to be there. And you have a chance to be closer with them than you ever were before. Just close your eyes, talk to them, ask them for signs, but be willing to see the signs. If you say, I really miss you, can you show me a butterfly soon? Look for butterflies. Maybe you haven't seen a butterfly in weeks. If a butterfly pops up, don't go, that's just coincidence. Just appreciate that moment and go, thank you. I know you're with me now. I get butterflies because I do that all the time. I don't try to quiz or test relatives or angels and go, prove it that you're here. What I do is say, hey, if you're around and you can hear me, I would love to just get a sign. And I always know when that sign comes, I'm 100% certain. I laugh to myself. I probably, if I'm out in public, I probably look like a lunatic, right? But I'm able to find those beautiful symbols around when I ask for them. And I just say, don't get disappointed if you don't see them, because they probably are there. You just might not be seeing them yourself. So don't be afraid of death, but do embrace being here on earth and making the best of it every day.
Beautiful. Chase, where's the best place for people to connect with you? And I will also put a link in the show notes below.
Yeah, my website or my social media. But if you go to the website, you see all my social media. It's Chase, CHASE, and then it's Skylar, SKYLAR.com. Easy enough. So ChaseSkylar.com. And if you go there, follow me on social media. Let's talk. Any questions that I can answer, any motivation you need, I'm here for you. And that's definitely the best way to get in touch with me.
What an inspiring, passionate conversation, Chase. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the Passion Harvest audience to end the show?
Just chase your light. Chase the light as much as you can. Find ways to make yourself happy. This podcast is a great start. Keep listening to the podcast, because I've gotten inspired listening to, the podcast, the interviews that you've done. Just if you need motivation, dig deep and find it, because you will live a fulfilled life. And I hope everybody the best. And I love all of you.
Thank you so much for spreading your light in the world, Chase.
Skylar
DeMayo, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean it. And hopefully we can keep in touch and do an interview soon again.
Sure. It was an honor. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you liked this episode, please do subscribe for weekly passionate, inspirational interviews.